As the displacement piston forces air out of the chamber, there's a work piston up here that forces air back in to keep the process reciprocating. Like so. So we're going to make that work piston right now. It's tiny, and it's machined from graphite to minimize friction as it's sliding back and forth inside the cylinder. There's a hole drilled all the way through it, and this is for attaching the drive rod that comes up through here. There are two V-grooves that are machined into it, as you can see, and then of course there's a boring in here. That's it. It's not that complicated a piece, it's just that the tolerances have to be just right. This has to just fit very nicely within the cylinder. So let's go make it. I've been working on the graphite work piston, and I'm getting close to the final diameter. I still have some returning to do. The trick is that this has to have a very close fit to the cylinder that we machined. And you can really only, I mean, you can come close numerically, but really the best way to do it is by feel. So I'm turning it down to a hair more than I think it ought to be, and then we'll just work our way to it. This is one of the most critical parts of the engine, because this cylinder has to, force air back into the. I'm sorry, this piston has to just force air back into the main cylinder, and so the fit has to be tight enough that you're forcing air, but not so tight that you've created too much friction. So the piston has to fit into this cylinder that we machined before. I really can't see what I'm doing from there. That's too big. But it's also very close. Rather than trying to turn it to the right diameter, I am going to use some very, very fine sandpaper, because this is only graphite. I'm just going to take away a little bit at a time. It's getting closer. You just have to be patient. Because once you go too far, you have to start over again. I'm surprised because I would have thought it would have fit at this point. Clearly it doesn't. Oh, we're getting there. Starting to fit. All right, well, just have to keep at it. Now it's still too tight, but it does fit now. So I have to be very careful from this point. You know, I have to make it a bit looser, but switch to a finer grit here. That's nice. It's still a little tight, but I will probably leave it like this and do any final sanding when I'm off the lathe after I've cut this off. Maybe one more shot. Yeah, that's good. All right. So there are a number of more operations on here. We've got to cut some. We've got to cut a couple of little grooves in here to let air in, and then we've got to drill it and bore it. So let me do some tool changes and we'll get back. I've switched to a V-groove tool here, which you might not be able to see, but we're just going to make a very small groove in here, just a couple of thousandths deep. I'm just sneaking up on it. Alright, I'm touching, and I'm going in 1, 2. Alright, I went in about 5 thousandths. I know it's barely noticeable, but the plans call for that, and assuming the guy that wrote the plans knows more than I do, so that's why we're putting that little groove there. Now we need one more. Right about there. So we'll do the same thing. Okay. Hard to imagine that will do a whole lot of anything, but who am I to judge? Alright, I'm going to change the setup again so we can do some drilling and boring now. Alright, I know I probably told you that I wasn't going to use the tailstock for drilling anymore, but these are such small holes through such a easy material to drill that it's just not worth going through any setup here. The first thing I have to drill is a hole that goes all the way through, and this is just this is to allow a 3mm screw to hold the for a 3mm screw to attach this to the drive rod. So that's done. I've decided to go ahead and use my drilling setup on the cross slide. The reason this time is because the depth of the hole I need some better control than I can ever get with the tailstock. So I'm just going to go ahead and set up some pecking cycle again. The hole that we have to bore in here is only slightly larger than I can actually drill, and its dimensions are not critical. Its width isn't, because it's just so that we can fit the drive rod in through here and be able to attach it. So I'm going to drill this out. You know, I'll switch to successively larger bits until I've got it drilled out to about 3/8 of an inch, and then I'll switch over the boring, and we'll finish it up that way. We're so close to the inner diameter being the same as the outer diameter. The plans call for another 20 thousandths to be removed from there. I simply don't believe that that's necessary. As the drive rod, I just don't believe it's necessary, and I'm not exactly thrilled about making this any thinner than it is right now. So I'm gonna make a management decision here that we're done, and I will deal with the consequences if there are any, but I don't believe there will be. I think this is just fine. So the last step is to part this thing off, and you've seen that enough times, so I'm not going to take you through it, but that piece ought to be done now. All right, the work piston is finished, and one good way to figure out if you've gotten the dimensions right, it should just drop in to the cylinder that you've made, and it should drop right back out. But if you don't forget, there's an air hole going going all the way through the cylinder. And if you put your finger over that hole and flip it over, can't see that. So I've got the piston in there, and now I've got my finger over the hole, and the cylinder is not coming out. Now it will eventually, but it should hang in there for, I don't know, 20 or 30 seconds. And what that's telling me is that, you know, I've got enough of a seal here that the piston moves freely without friction, and yet, you know, when there's an air seal, it doesn't just release. So it ought to be able, when everything is working, for it to be able to push air in here. So, you know, hopefully that's right. You know, it hasn't moved at all, but if I release one, well, oh, that's why. And now I released my finger, so it's working. I'm holding it, and now I'm releasing it. So there is an air seal, and that's what we're looking for. So that should work out nicely.